Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to our new season of Health Matters with me, Aisha Zaid. In this new season, we'll be concentrating more on nutrition. But before we kickstart on our first topic, let me introduce to you our guest, Zahra Muhammad, who is going to help us unpack the different topics that we're going to be discussing here on the show. Welcome, Zahra, to the show. Kindly tell us more about yourself and what you do.
My name is Zahra Mohammed Soba. I am a registered dietitian and nutritionist by profession, and my specialty or my focus is on the prevention, reversing, as well as treating chronic conditions such as type 2 diabetes, obesity, cancer, heart disease, and so on.
Now, as we all know, nutrition is the most essential pillar in our lifestyle. While our health and well-being is being controlled by what we do every day, what we eat determines how our bodies and minds are going to be. So what is nutrition? So Zahra, make us understand what nutrition is and why it is important to our bodies.
So nutrition refers to the process of taking in food and converting that food into energy and other vital nutrients that are required for life. So when we look at the different stages that we go through in life, from infancy to childhood to adolescence to adulthood to old age, proper nutrition is required in all of these stages in order to successfully go through all of these stages. And when we talk about good nutrition, what we're talking about is a dietary pattern that is high in whole grains such as rice, wheat, oats, legumes such as beans, lentils, green grams, nuts and seeds, fruits and vegetables, of course, herbs and spices as well, lean cuts of meat, as well as fish. So this is what we refer to as proper nutrition or a good dietary pattern, which is necessary to go through each of these stages. And you asked me why it's important for everyone to have knowledge about nutrition. So the reason behind this is because food usually interacts with our biology to create either health and longevity. And when I say longevity, what I mean is, extending your life, being able to live longer as well as to age well, meaning that you're still able to maintain a lot of your independence even as you age. So food interacts with our bodies or our biology to create either health and longevity or disease and early death. So diet or the food that you eat actually plays a very big role in turning on and off pathways of inflammation. So when I talk about inflammation, when we look at these chronic diseases like obesity, cancer, type 2 diabetes, these are usually inflammation-based conditions, right? Inflammation is present in these diseases. So food plays a very big role in in determining whether the genes that are expressed in our body are those that cause disease or those that actually promote health. And so it is important for each of us to have some basic knowledge about how our bodies function. We might not all have the scientific background, but this body is what we have. It's how it's what enables us to move through life, to achieve whatever goals we're trying to achieve in our life. And so we have to have at least some basic knowledge about how it works as well as what it needs in order to operate optimally.
Can one meal take care of one's nutritional needs?
So it's difficult to achieve your calorie requirements in one meal. When I say calorie is refers to the amount of energy present in food. And so every one of us, we have a certain calorie requirement that we need to take in per day in order for our body to operate optimally. So to fit that into one meal is very difficult. If we take the example of an average man whose calorie requirement is around 2,500, fitting all of that into one meal would be very difficult. That would be overeating, eating too much food in one sitting. But if it's 3 meals or 2 meals, then it's very possible to do that. But of course there is the aspect of economic hardship, people not being able to afford more than one meal. Sometimes people don't eat at all. So of course in that case you move with what you have, you eat what you have. But typically it's not advisable to have one meal.
Does a well-balanced meal cater for all our nutritional needs?
Yes, a well-balanced meal does cater, and when we talk about a well-balanced meal, what we're talking about is one that is high in whole grains, like I said, legumes, fruits and vegetables, nuts and seeds, lean cuts of meat, as well as fatty fish. So yes.
So a well-balanced diet also goes hand in hand with lifestyle. So is nutrition just part of a health lifestyle, or are factors like exercise, sleep, stress management intersect with dietary choices?
Yes, so of course our overall health is not just affected by what we eat, it's also affected by our level of physical activity, our sleep, you know, how we are able to handle stress and so on. And so nutrition is a good foundation, it's a good place to start, you know, if you're trying to improve your health. But of course it's not the answer to everything. So for example, individuals who are not physically active, you could be having the well-balanced diet, as we talked about, but you're not active, you're seated, you're not exercising, you're not moving. So what happens is the food that you're taking in as much as it is healthy, it is what we advocate for, but the fact that you're not utilizing it, you're not moving, that food ends up being converted into fat. And we know that, you know, the presence of excess fat in the body is what promotes inflammation and, you know, is what is behind many of these chronic diseases. If we take the example of stress, for individuals who have chronic stress, meaning stress over an extended period of time, they could be eating well, yes, but the presence of cortisol, which is the hormone that is released when you're stressed out, actually encourages the storage of fat around the vital organs. We call it visceral fat, the fat that ends up being stored around your heart, around your liver, your very vital organs. And again, this is the kind of fat that then leads to many of these chronic diseases. So yes, there must be a balance between all of these aspects, but like I said, nutrition is a good place to start.
So what you're saying is nutrition cannot be effective when we are not considering the other lifestyles, like maybe exercising.
Yeah, definitely, yes. But of course, you know, you're not going to wake up one morning and, you know, you're eating right and you're exercising and you're able to manage your stress. Of course, this is a journey that you go on. It's, you know, bit by bit, it's changing habits. So you can start with nutrition and then progress into exercise and then progress into sleep. So yeah, it doesn't, you know, operate on its own. Other factors are important, but again, it's about building these habits over time.
So what you're trying to say is nutrition works hand in hand with other...
Yes, exactly.
Okay. Zahra, food is often referred to as our first line of defense in maintaining health. Is it more about the food we consume or the awareness and choices we make about our food that impact our health?
Okay. Yeah, so it is definitely about what we eat, and of course, you know, that is determined by how informed we are in terms of, you know, what certain foods do to our bodies. For example, the unprocessed foods versus the processed foods, the knowledge behind what these foods do to our body, and why, for example, doctors or nutritionists advocate for one thing and not for the other thing. Definitely the awareness around that would definitely then determine or guide someone's food choices.
It's good that you've mentioned doctors refer to you some healthy food. So in Kenya and many other people, accessing healthy food might be a challenge. So what are some of the barriers that Kenyans face in accessing nutritious food, and how can these challenges be overcome?
Okay, so I think when it comes to access in the Kenyan context, I wouldn't say we have a problem with accessing healthy food. If we take the example of the United States, where the healthy food like the fruits and vegetables, the tomatoes, is actually more expensive than the processed foods like the juices and the burgers and the fries. So in that context, then I would say accessing healthy food is definitely difficult for the poor communities. But in Kenya, if you compare the processed foods with the and processed foods. The fresh foods are much more accessible. We can actually, we're able to afford the healthy foods more than the fries and the juices and so on. So I would say in the Kenyan context, the problem is not accessibility, unless we're talking about, individuals who do not have the income to buy food, and, in such a context, then yes, accessibility is an issue. But for us, in our context, I would say the problem is mainly our failure to plan. So like when we're trying to...
Exactly. That one will take us to lifestyle, because people may tend to think that eating fruits, accumulating it in our meals is just a lifestyle. Maybe the rich people are more into putting fruits in their meals, and like the average. Yeah.
So, okay, so that just speaks to the very common belief that people have that eating healthy is expensive. Yeah, and that's actually not true at all. So like I said, the fruits, the vegetables, the onions, the potatoes, these are things we can afford much more easily compared to, compared to the processed foods. So it's a very common misconception that eating healthy is expensive, and that if you want to change how you're eating, or if you want to improve your eating, then it means that you need more money, but it's actually not the case. What you actually need is a better planning, right? So if you're trying to change any habit, then you need to plan yourself in order to make sure that you don't fall back to your previous habits. So in this case of nutrition or of eating better, what we're looking at is, for example, going grocery shopping maybe over the weekend, making sure that you have all the ingredients you need, throughout the week, and of course also being aware of what your weaknesses are, and being able to plan ahead just to make sure that you don't fall back into the same. So again, it's not true that eating healthy is expensive. It's a very big misconception, and I think where we fail ourselves is our failure to plan. Like changing any habit, it requires a lot of work. You need to consciously make these changes, and so you need to plan ahead to make sure that you stick to it.
This question takes us to the next question, which is, do you think modern lifestyle has significantly changed how we eat compared to the cultural practices?
Yeah, so the modern culture has definitely come with a lot of problems, negative body image, self-image, as well as the restrictive dieting. So when we look at social media, when we look at the current culture, it's one that promotes these very restrictive diets. We call them fad diets, FAD, fad diets. So these are the kind of diets that usually make very unreasonable claims. Like, for example, you lose all belly fat in 1 week, or you lose more than 1 kg in 1 week. So they make very unreasonable claims, and they all tend to be highly restrictive. So what you're eating is, a very tiny amount of food, and of course it's nutritionally imbalanced. So yeah, with the current modern culture, there's, a flood in, you find so many people following these fad diets, hoping that they'll lose weight or achieve whatever goal they're trying to achieve. Also with the modern culture, it has also come with eating disorders like binge eating and anorexia and so on. And so we are definitely overwhelmed with a lot of, we're living in an age of misinformation, where there's so much information, there's so much conflicting articles or information. It's difficult for the average person to know what is true and what is false, and that is why we're doing a show. That's why having a show such as Health Matters is extremely important, because we're able to act as a filter for many people who don't have that scientific background, who are not able to understand what the risks are with following many of these diets that are promoted by influencers and things of the sort. And our food environment is also one that promotes the consumption of these processed foods. When we look at the marketing, when we're watching television or when we're walking around town, these processed foods are what are mostly promoted, based on, how we interact with the world. And so, again, having this kind of information, having a show like this is extremely important, just to act as, just to be able to simplify the very complex or complicated topics or terms, and breaking it down into very understandable content that people can then use to make informed decisions about their life. And of course, when we talk about, eating better or good nutrition, like we said, it's not expensive, but it's also not about restricting yourself. So again, a lot of people believe that eating well means punishing yourself. It's a very restrictive diet, but that's actually not true. So remember that food is part of our culture. It's how we interact with people. It's how we make social connections. So in our quest to eat better, we should still maintain the pleasure that we get from food.
With food, with the modern and cultural practices, on the cultural practices that were there before, the fertilizers that were being used, the manures, they were actually using manures, and right now, the modern, what is being used, does it affect the food that you are taking, the nutritional needs?
Yeah, definitely. When we look at the modern agriculture and compare it to traditional agriculture, there's definitely, when we look at now the quality of food that we have, there is a very significant decrease in the nutrients that are present in the food that we have because of the use of fertilizers and chemicals and so on. So yeah, modern agriculture has also played a very big impact. And that's why, now more than ever, supplementation or supplementing with certain nutrients is actually important. Because yes, you might be having the vegetables and the fruits and the whole grains, but again, because of the poor soil, the quality of the soil has also degraded because of modern agriculture again. So the quality of the nutrients in food is not the same as it was, 100, 200 years before. So again, now supplementing is actually important for everyone. We used to think that supplementation is just for maybe people who are sick, who have certain deficiencies, but currently, many of us, actually I would say all of us could be deficient in many nutrients, and so supplementation becomes very, extremely important in this case.
So you're encouraging the intake of supplements?
Yes, I am, but it also it depends on what kind of supplements, of course, and also it's important not to take supplements blindly. So people just
take them. This is vitamin C. I'm going to take vitamin C. This is for. But there are different supplements which for hair. So people.
Yeah, people take it anyhow. Yeah. So supplementing blindly is what I'm definitely against. So you do need to carry out blood tests in order to know, for example, if it's vitamin D, what is your current level of vitamin D, of calcium.
But these are things that you can get them over the counter. So what you're saying is one should go first get the test done before you go take the supplements.
Exactly, because now from the test that is done, then the doctor will be able to guide you based on your current levels. What is the, for example, the amount of vitamin D that you require? Because you could end up overdosing, or you could end up taking a supplement that your body actually doesn't require, and so you end up just throwing money. So in order to be more targeted, you actually need to test, know what your current levels are, and the doctor will guide you on now what amount do you need per day.
Before we wind up on your last insight.
So my last take is let's be curious about how our body works and what it needs in order to function optimally. So not just in the sense of nutrition, but also in terms of exercise and sleep and other factors which we hopefully will cover in this show.
Thank you so much, Zahra, for your insights, and I hope everyone that has watched was informed as much as I was informed. Do not hesitate to ask us any questions on our social media platforms. That wraps up our first episode of Nutrition. Stay tuned for more health topics here on Health Matters.